DW correspondent in Kyiv, Nick Connolly, spoke earlier by phone to a resident of Kherson, which is also under Russian control. This city is in southern Ukraine near the Black Sea coast. It was seized by Russian troops in early March. A week ago, Russian soldiers fired on civilians who were protesting peacefully there against their occupiers. The 30-year-old Ukrainian man, who we're calling James to protect his identity, gave us his insight into everyday life in Kherson since the Russian takeover.
I've heard the explosion, and then a couple of minutes later, my friend called me up, and he told me the war is on. Nothing's been delivered, neither food nor medicine. So what you do is you walk or you take a bicycle for a trip in search of money, food, and medicine. Most of the coffee shops sell now potatoes and cabbage instead of marshmallows and cakes. At first it was quite overwhelming, and the Ukrainians expressed all the emotions that they felt about the invasion by looking into the eyes of the Russian soldiers. They kept on doing this every day for the first 3 weeks. Probably you've seen at some point that the Ukrainians started pushing back 2 Russian lorries, and on the same day we've received a report from Russia that some of the generals ordered the police forces in Kherson to suppress the demonstrations. I think the Ukrainian demonstration movement crossed some lines, and it made some Russian officials very angry. We hear the explosions become hotter and louder, and yesterday night I've seen my hanging door vibrate like I've never seen it vibrate before. The Ukrainians are getting closer to town. We want our army to liberate us, but we don't know what happens afterwards, and we are very much afraid of what is happening to the city if the Ukrainian army liberates us and the Russians remain on the left bank of Dnieper. And if they start shelling at the city, no one really knows, but until now they've been shelling every city they could if it's not in their hands.
The Red Cross has launched a new attempt to get civilians out of the devastated city of Mariupol in southern Ukraine. The port city has been under siege by Russian forces for weeks. Tens of thousands of people are believed to be trapped in desperate circumstances and exposed to constant bombardment. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Friday that some people did manage to escape against the odds.
Arriving to relative safety after weeks of shelling, over 3,000 were able to escape Mariupol on Friday. But it's a journey full of risks. One woman recounts her fears as she crossed a Russian checkpoint. It was very difficult, she said. I was afraid they would take my son away. They made him throw his phone on the ground and trample on it because he had American music. An attempt by the Red Cross to deliver aid and evacuate civilians ended in failure. The organization said the lives of thousands depended on evacuations.
We haven't heard anything from our people in Mariupol for more than 1 week. There is still our staff working in Mariupol. Plus, we have there still around 6 volunteers working in Mariupol, but we do not know anything about their destiny if they're alive. We know that they have difficulties because they do not have, they have problems with transport. Red Cross cars were partially damaged. Our office was partially damaged. So that's the situation.
Unable to wait, others fled the bombs in cars. The white cloth, a sign they mean no harm. As many as 170,000 are still trapped in this city that's been devastated by war. This former orphanage, now a makeshift bomb shelter for those who can't escape. We came here to the basement, she said. We stay here because we don't know what happened to our apartment. We ran here with what we had. The Red Cross said they will attempt once again to reach the city on Saturday in a bid to rescue the innocent from what is left of Mariupol.
For the latest, we can speak to our correspondent, Rebecca Ritters, who is in the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. Rebecca, good to see you. So, according to Ukrainian authorities, humanitarian corridors are now in place to evacuate people from Mariupol. But what are you hearing about today's rescue attempts? How are they going?
It's so difficult to get accurate and up-to-date information on the evacuations and the situation in that city of Mariupol, where it's really difficult. Yesterday, we were sort of getting conflicting information. We know that the Red Cross has been trying to get into that city, as you were saying in the report there, that the Red Cross has been trying to get into Mariupol to bring in much needed aid, but to also bring out the thousands of civilians that are still trapped in there. We know that those attempts so far have failed, but as you've just reported, on Thursday we know that a couple of thousand of people were able to get out. That's in a sort of a private convoy, basically people just taking a chance, taking their own private vehicles and risking it to get out of the dire situation of Mariupol that's happening in Mariupol right now. And again yesterday, another 2,000 to 3,000 also managed to evacuate. We got confirmation of that from Mariupol City Council. But the Red Cross once again turned around. They weren't able to get in. And today I have no confirmation on numbers or whether or not any of those attempts failed or people were able to get out. But I can tell you that today in Lviv, in the western part of Ukraine, relatively safe compared to the rest of the country. As you can see, people behind me here out on the street, out and about. The 300 or so of people from Mariupol arrived in this city. So there are some people getting out, but many, many more, up to 160,000 people we're hearing are still trapped inside that city of Mariupol.
Now, Rebecca, we're also hearing reports about explosions in the city of Enerhodar, which we understand is near a nuclear plant. What more can you tell us about that?
That's right. Well, it was a series of explosions. It was confirmed by the country, by Ukraine's nuclear energy agency. As you say, it's near the nuclear plant of Zaporizhia, in Zaporizhia. Also, significantly, the town where a lot of the people from Mariupol and from those eastern cities are actually evacuating to. But more concerning, perhaps, is that it is home to the fifth largest, I believe, power plant in Europe. And it's, one of the biggest, in fact, but it gives Ukraine about a fifth of Ukraine's energy. So it's a really huge plant. And of course, everyone has fears, bringing up memories of Chernobyl, 1986, that huge nuclear explosion that happened here. And nobody wants to see anything like that. The area where the plant has been under Russian control since March 4th. And everyone's just waiting to see what's going to happen there and very concerned about what will happen with the power plant.
That was DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters reporting for us from the city of Lviv. Thank you so much.
Let's get you up to speed on some of the other global headlines. Video footage just released has revealed the destruction many towns in northeastern Ukraine suffered during Russia's invasion. The Ukrainian state TV footage shows the town of Sumy near the Russian border, which has been under siege. Ukrainian forces have retaken areas in the north of the country as Russian troops withdraw. Ukrainian documentary filmmaker and photographer Maxim Levin has been found dead in a village near the capital Kyiv. He'd been missing since mid-March. According to initial information, Levin was shot by Russian soldiers. However, investigations are still ongoing. Sri Lanka has imposed a nationwide curfew to stop protests against the government. The new restrictions will be in place till Monday morning. Earlier this week, demonstrators clashed with police during protests over shortages of basic supplies like food, fuel and medicine. Hong Kong authorities are asking the entire population, that's 7.4 million people, to self-test for COVID next week. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said a compulsory universal test was essential as the territory struggles to contain a fifth wave of infection. Sergei Loznitsa is one of Ukraine's best-known and most controversial film directors. For years, with his features and documentaries, he has been warning that Russia was planning a war against his country. Now his fiction has become Ukraine's reality.
Civilians running from bombing in Ukraine. This isn't yesterday's news, but a film from 2018 set in Donbass, eastern Ukraine, where Russian forces are supporting pro-Putin separatists. The civilians are actors staging a fake news massacre for Russian TV, propaganda to justify the military incursion. Ukraine director Sergei Loznitsa shows how for years Russia planned its war of aggression against Ukraine, but the West wasn't paying attention. Western liberal democracies were asleep when the new Russia was forming, when it was attacking in Grozny, Chechnya, again when it was attacking Georgia, Crimea, Donbass in Ukraine, and so on. What we're witnessing now is, in a way, the consequences of this sleep, of this lack of counteraction on the part of the West. In his 2014 documentary Maidan, on a pro-West uprising, Loznitsa used only long takes to capture what he says was the truth of the historic moment. Even the style of my film is in a way opposed to this method of propaganda, like the Russian propaganda newsreels, which presented a very different picture of what was happening in Ukraine. But Loznitsa is also controversial in Ukraine, in part because his documentary, Baba Yar Context, about a Nazi massacre outside Kyiv in 1941, included scenes showing locals celebrating the arrival of the Nazis and standing by as they round up the Jews. But also because, even after the Russian invasion, Loznitsa refuses to support a full boycott of Russian cinema. In response, the Ukrainian Film Academy kicked him out. I'm absolutely against the proposed total boycott of Russian cultural figures and Russian filmmakers who've actually been opposing the regime and have been condemning the war. Because if we do that, if we boycott them, as well as everyone else, in a way, we'll be betraying them. Loznitsa says he's no prophet and he's no politician. His films don't speak for Ukraine, but try to depict the world and the war as he sees it.